Hello and welcome back. Today we don't have anything particularly educational to do, but instead we're going to be focusing on what we need to do in preparation for winter to roll around. So, as you can see, we've got these plants in front of me now. What they are isn't really relevant, and it's too obscure even for my taste to do a video on them. But as you can see, they're under lights and they're on a tarp because they've been moved indoors for the winter after they were out for the summer. And the problem with moving things indoors is that the ecosystem inside is quite limited compared to what it is outside, which means that if unwanted passengers come in on the plants, such as your whiteflies or your spider mites or amelia-bugs or whatnot, there isn't anything to eat them, and you can't bring in stuff that will without it causing a mess, such as, you don't want ladybugs inside your house or whatever. So we're going to address what you do when you bring plants in order to make sure that they are staying healthy and don't have a whole lot of pest problems going on. So what we need is cutting tools for pruning. I sterilized these ones just now with alcohol, but it's not necessarily something you need to do. Ordinary makeup brush or paintbrush for application of diatomaceous earth, and a 5-gallon bucket for the purpose of catching bits you prune off. Now, these plants here, they don't actually need anything because they're quite small. So what we're going to focus on is a cousin of theirs over here. So when you're looking for what you cut, you first take a look at the plant as a whole. Sorry, just moving the bucket. Which leaves are healthier, which leaves aren't. But you also look at the leaves and how well lit they are, what sort of capacity you have to keep them lit. Because in general, anything green on a plant is providing for it, and you wouldn't normally prune it, except if you've just moved it, the light conditions will be different, and it may not do to keep its its entire set of leaves, because it can no longer afford that. And the more unhealthy leaves a plant has, the more room it has for stuff to be living on it that there shouldn't be. So, as you can see over here, we have some branches that don't have a whole lot of good leaves on them. So, what we're going to do is follow the branch down, far down as it goes, and that will be this one right about here. So you pull on it, you go up, that bit's off, toss it into the bucket. The bucket also serves to catch bugs that aren't, you don't want to have killed off. So you can take them back outside. But yeah, so take your scissors. Actually, I'm going to want to use these ones for something else. Your pruning shears. You go down close to the base and clip. So the first clip is done, bringing out a bunch of dead tissue. It's only going to get in the way, restrict airflow, and so on. And then you simply find the next branch you don't want, follow that one most of the way down, and clip. the branch that's too dark and will cause a burden on the plant will also have to go. I think this one's probably also too dark. This here isn't healthy. Either is that. This guy here isn't even the same thing. He shouldn't be in the pot. I think I've attempted to evict him several times already. So just going to clip that one fairly low. It'll come back, it always does. The problem with grasses is that their root systems can be hard to dislodge without damaging whatever it is you're trying to protect. So it's not much of a point to it. This is the same plant, but it looks like no, maybe not. I thought it was a different set for a second, but no, it's the same one. And just keep removing bits. We've got some unhealthy stuff over here. Clip, clip. This whole thing can probably go. Doing this one-handed is a little bit tricky. Normally I'd be able to do it much easier with, or much more easily rather, with both hands, but I've got to make sure there's a camera, good view for the camera. We're going to clip that one. These branches here have got flowers on them, but they're unfortunately not well lit enough to keep. So they're going to have to go. But something I want to point out is this branch right here. That sort of speckling on a leaf can sometimes indicate mite damage. So if you see that sort of thing starting to happen, is it going to focus or no? Wonder why it's not. There we go. So if you see that sort of thing starting to happen, or something that looks like it, you might want to take a closer look before the spider mites fully explode, because the thing with spider mites is you don't think there's that many of them, and then all of a sudden everything is absolutely covered in webs, and they are the devil incarnate. So this one, I'm going to take off this half of it, but that one can stay because it's both well lit and fairly healthy. This side's got to go. I think everything over here, and once again this bit, so I'm going to clip, pull on that, clip that, zoom back out for a better view. Now, the trouble with this guy in particular is this plant is what you would call a geophyte, meaning that it can retreat underground if it's too stressed out, and I don't want to accidentally send it dormant during the winter, because for science reasons I need to keep them healthy and grow a bunch of them. If we look here, a fruit fell off of it. They roll. Yeah, there we go. So that's what the plant's berries look like. They are unpleasant, shall we say. Kind of, I found like a sour green pepper. Here we have an oxalis sneaking in. Don't want that. That must go. Oxalis are a common greenhouse weed, outdoors too actually, because they're able to grow in pretty much any conditions, but also they have their seed pods blow up when they're done, and the explosive seeds have a tendency to get all over the place. So let's see here. We're gonna cut that one, that, there we go. Now, I'm being a little more reckless with this guy than perhaps I normally would, because I know it can handle it. Even if it does go dormant, it's still better than what could happen if the spider mites have their way with it. So I'm fairly comfortable taking off large chunks, even though normally you wouldn't want to do something like that, especially if you only have one plant and you don't want to risk it. But this one can handle it being cut back pretty far. Let's see, that one can probably stay. Just gotta toss some stuff in the bucket. So there are still a few unhealthy branches on this thing. That one and that one. But overall, we're getting pretty close to set, I think, and can move on to the others. So I'm just going to give this one a couple more clips, and oh, this one's, glad I decided to wait a little longer, because this entire branch here looks like a problem. Broken pieces also go pretty easily. You've got some more oxalis. Let's give it a quick turn around and see. Yeah, that's also too low. So we're gonna cut that one about here, I think. So you can see here, half of this branch is living, half of it isn't. So I'm just going to break it carefully, like so. And I think that plant's about done. So now let's, who's next? This one's gonna be a hassle. So real quick. ta-da! We've got this this fuzzy guy here. Leaves are quite soft, actually, like velvet. They're the softest plant I've ever felt in my life. Lamb's ear doesn't even come close. But as you can see, we have these two branches here are going quite nicely upwards, but it grew those recently over the summer, and most of it is down here, and that's obviously not good for it. So what do we do? Now, this plant is fairly resistant to pests, so it's not as high a priority, but it can still be a host to them. So we need to cut it. But that's a problem because this tissue is fairly healthy because it was outdoors in full sunlight until about a week and a half ago. And also, this plant is quite rare. I don't know how many of them there are left in the world, probably none out in the wild. And so I need to make sure that I'm not going to damage any of its fruit, because if it loses its fruit, we don't know when the next batch will come in. So I'm just going to carefully sift through its leaves, looking for any sign that it has flowers or fruit on it, because I know I saw a fair number of them, or the flowers at least, during the summer. So what do we do? I actually think this might be easier than I thought now, because I'm not seeing any signs that this guy actually retained any of its fruit. Oh, 1 second. There's a cat causing problems. Okay, that's settled. Cat's not tearing things up anymore. He doesn't want to be on camera either, because they're a problem. Then, so now that this plant here is confirmed to be safe to cut, the first thing we're going to do is take a very big slice close to the base where it's fissuring. So that first part done. Now we can move all this. But this is a lot of healthy tissue. So what do you do? Well, fortunately, there is a way to, oh god damn it. That's what I wanted to avoid. That's a fruit on the plant there. Very hard to see because they're light green, and when they turn ripe they fall off, so it's not like you're gonna notice them as easily as on the other one. But regardless, this is a mostly healthy plant tissue. So you can take a piece, so find a nice growing piece here, follow it down to I'd say about 2 nodes, and then we're going to cut it there. So now we have this. And now if we take this piece, I'm just going to set it down. We can slice that off, and then that piece there, and then you simply take this one down to only this set of ending leaves. So this little branch goes, that leaf goes, that leaf goes, that one, and then these last pieces here cut them in half, so that way it doesn't lose out on too much water. So once again, you take this piece, you take the bottom off, no leaves down that far, not that leaf either, or that one, and then with this you take that one in half, half of that one, that one, that one, that one, and that one. And this also serves as a way of telling if the cutting has started to grow or not. Because if the cutting is growing, you will see full leaves starting to come back out. I can take this too, I think. Now, it is important you get your cuttings in water or in their substrate fairly quickly. Two cuttings are normally enough, but because of how endangered this plant is, I am going to take 4. So the bottom, there we go, just the bottom of these cuttings here, just and done. That is 4 cuttings of the plant that I need to keep alive. So, now that we have our cuttings, what do we actually do with them? Well, I have a pot full of vermiculite here, fairly lightweight, holds water well, and you just take your cutting and you press it down into the vermiculite as far as it'll go. Vermiculite does not have any sort of nutrition that plants will need, but the cutting itself is responsible for that. So they'll need to be transplanted out of here as soon as they put down enough roots. Normally, for most plants, you would want to use some form of root dust or rooting powder. For this one, I'm going to try without because a colleague of mine says they do better that way. But it just depends on what it is. Sometimes you can plant in water to get them to root. Sometimes you can put them directly in soil. In my experience, vermiculite is the best option. And now that I have the cuttings in something that will keep them from drying out, I am going to put a heat mat underneath and some form of cup on top to keep the humidity inside, because plants that dry out when they don't have any roots tend not to do very well. If it's not fatal, it's close. And you generally want them to be rooting in a shady area to avoid heat stressing them, but also because if the bottom of the pot in toward where the roots are supposed to be forming, if that bit is staying warmer than the top bit where the leaves are, the plant's metabolism will be more active in the roots, and a more active metabolism there makes them much more likely to grow roots first instead of leaves. And one of the annoying parts about cuttings, especially with these guys, is sometimes the stem will just start shooting up a huge shrubby plant, and then you check the roots even after 2 months and flowers and fruit and all that, and it has none at all. And then you gotta put it back and try all over again. Quite frustrating if you ask me. So the cuttings are done, and now I'll have to show you how you actually treat whiteflies and spider mites indoors. So here we have a bag of diatomaceous earth, crawling insect killer. It's distinct from the food grade one because the crawling insects ones, they are sharper. They're made of diatom shells, of course, and these are sharper, more abrasive, and they will slice up the cuticles of insects and arachnids and whatnot that crawl around. It's a truly terrible thing in my opinion, so I only use this stuff indoors. If I catch or hear of anyone using it outside, there will be a problem. It feels practically criminal to do. But either way, you take your bag and you take your little paintbrush, just reach in, touch it ever so slightly, maybe knock off a little bit of the extra on the walls, and then you go over to your plants, and for cuttings in particular, it can be a hassle, so you just tap it on them a little bit. You do want to be a little careful here because too much of it can impede their ability to photosynthesize. But for cuttings like these, they're not going to be doing a whole lot of that anyway because, well, they're not really supposed to yet. So, I think you tend to want to get the top and the bottom of the leaves, but these guys are fuzzy anyway. I'm only using them as a demonstration. The dense fur they have provides them an amount of protection against insects because they have a harder time physically reaching they can't physically get to the leaf surface. And that tends to, it's a pretty good thing. So we're going to go to our first guy here. Take a little bit of diatom powder and just brush it ever so slightly. You don't need a whole lot. Sometimes more of it can actually cause a problem, because if there's too much, the pests will be able to avoid it properly, and that defeats the purpose. Now, this is a problem you tend to encounter when you're putting diatom powder on plants with leaves that are too smooth, is that it slides off. To solve this problem, you can use a dust applicator, or you can mix it in water. However, the water method and the dust applicator are both unsuited for indoor use because it makes a tremendous mess. So, what I think I'm going to do is get these guys moved out one at a time, probably blast them on, actually, doing it in the shower might work, yeah. Probably going to spray them with diatom solution in the shower, and then I'll bring them back down when they finish drying out, so it doesn't drip diatom powder all over the place. Is there anything else that I think is important to talk about getting plants in? Yes, spacing. So, if we go back to the first set, the plants that we were at originally, you can fit them pretty closely, but you have to note that sometimes the bigger ones like these will shade out the smaller ones, and you don't really want that. So, as you can see, maybe you can't see it there. There we go, found them. So you want to arrange them in such a way that the larger ones and the smaller ones are getting equal access to light, and also you want to move them around and stuff like that. So that's been the first, introduction on how to move plants into the winter. If anything comes up, I'll make a video on that. And some other videos should be soon about spooky nightshades, because, these guys are all nightshades here, but they're not the scary kind. Not at all. The scary kind is covered in spikes and reaches 6 feet tall. And I happen to have a couple of those that are in flower right now, so I'll be doing a video on them as soon as I get the opportunity. I hope you enjoyed, and thank you for watching, and have a wonderful day.